Yeah, welcome to the webinar, Fundraise Smarter, Not Harder, How to Optimize Your Operation with Fundraising Automation. For a little just kind of introduction here, my name is Jeff Giannato. I'm the Director of Sales at MarketSmart. I've been here going on about 11 years, so I've really seen the evolution of what we do in the industry over that time and can really give you a lot of insights on both what we do and how to replicate it in-house if that's what you're looking to do. You might and probably are more familiar with the name Greg Warner. He's our CEO and founder. He's, signs off on a lot of our blogs unless they're, written by anybody guest writing and things like that. And he's really the creator of everything you're going to learn today. He's written a book, Engagement Fundraising, that you can download for free from our website. You may have read. He leads our LinkedIn groups and our blog, kind of the same blog being posted between the LinkedIn group and our website, so you can take it in either way. Some of you may be more familiar with Fundraising Report Card, which is a fundraising metrics and visualization tool. And others may be familiar with the DAF widget, which is a free of charge tool that we provide to the fundraising world that allows you to essentially put a button on your website that gives your supporters access to hundreds of donor advised fund login pages. So a lot of different, tools out there that we provide. My colleague Trisha is posting some links there in the chat in case you want to engage with any of those offers. We will get in eventually to a little deeper discussion of what we do here at MarketSmart, but don't worry, this isn't a big sales pitch or something on MarketSmart, but just for your understanding, if you're not familiar with us, we are a mid-level major in plan giving qualification and cultivation firm. We provide software and services that essentially lead to two very important outcomes: zeroing in on people who are ready to talk to a fundraiser about mid-level major in plan giving, but then nurturing and warming supporters who have potential, to make those types of gifts, but they're not immediately outreach ready. Now, we'll come back around at the end to talking about MarketSmart. For here, we'll be talking about, for now, we'll talk about the topic at hand. So just so everybody knows, we will be sending out a recording of this afterwards. You will also get access to the slides reviewing here. As mentioned, feel free to use the chat tool and other sort of ways to communicate with us here. And furthermore, if what we have to say today resonates with you and you want to learn more about truly MarketSmart and potential to partner with us, just go to our website, hit that schedule a demo button in the upper right corner, and we'll go from there. We'll reach out to you and we can talk. But jumping into things here, we've got a little agenda. One is just introducing the topic by talking about why you should even consider fundraising automation, our recommendations for how to actually do that, whether you're working with a internal or external partner to do it, and actual examples from the field. Once we're through all of that, which should take maybe 40-45 minutes, if possible less, we'll do a quick overview, very quick, of what we do at MarketSmart. We'll open the floor to just questions and answers from the audience. And then finally, there is a survey when you exit this webinar, whether you make it the whole way through and exit or midway through, and just would really appreciate your input so that we can improve, what we're doing here and just get your input. So jumping into things on the, why consider, automation. I think first we've got to set the stage a little bit, and you all know this context, but I just want to start here. The floor is sort of shifting. The dynamics of fundraising are shifting. Donor bases are aging. Traditional methods are losing their impact. You're probably seeing more and more of your supporters use different types of vehicles, such as donor advised funds or family foundations that allow them to give anonymously. And it's challenging. Charities operate within a dual model, the transactional and the relational. The transactional, such as your annual fund effort, offers quick wins and clear metrics. The relational, your major gift program, it's longer term. It's about building relationships with people, and at times requires sort of quantifying the qualitative, in a sense of how you're actually helping someone move through a consideration process. One of the biggest challenges for any size organization is limited bandwidth for frontline fundraising. It leaves a lot of supporters untapped in terms of truly knowing their story and if they're ready for a conversation about a bigger, type of gift. And what we're going to really talk about today is how marketing and tech can be really catalysts in scaling your discovery and qualification and cultivation efforts, allowing you to provide a personal touch at scale, even with limited human resources. And so what you'll be seeing today are tactics that we deploy at MarketSmart on behalf of our customers, but you'll see how you can replicate all of these things in-house if desired, kind of through collaboration between fundraising and marketing, as we'll discuss. So a little bit of just setting the table there and sort of the context to what we're dealing with, but really diving into automation here. I think everybody knows this. What's the value of automation? It's doing more with less, increasing efficiency, adding value, driving better results, and you experience it as is in your day-to-day in many different ways. But how do you apply it to mid-level major and plan giving? It's really about optimizing your frontline fundraising efforts. This is an older study, but the facts from it and data still ring true. Maybe a little bit of variance for your organization, but this research study from Ruffalo Noah Levitz was mentioning there's an average caseload of 142 supporters. Many fundraisers stated that only half of those individuals actually get a visit each year. Half the fundraisers said they don't have enough time to get everything done. And a lot reported significant frustration with the time spent setting up and completing qualification visits that ultimately didn't lead to an actual gift. And furthermore, oops, I jumped ahead. The fundraisers in this study stated that only about 37% of the identified and assigned prospects were truly qualified to be in their caseload. So we'll talk about today, how do you optimize those efforts? How do you make sure there's fewer false positives, fewer wild goose chases, and marketing, tech, and automation are all solutions and answers to those challenges. But I wanted to do a quick poll just to take a pulse of the audience here. So Trisha, this will pull up on your screen in just a moment. What's your level of frustration? We just saw some stats there, but what would you say when thinking about the time spent working on arranging and completing qualification visits that don't lead to major gifts, false positives leading to wild goose chases? Are you not frustrated at all, a little frustrated, somewhat frustrated, very frustrated, extremely frustrated? So I believe the poll, yeah, here we go, is popping up here. So I'm seeing the results come in. I'll give it a second and I'll hit end poll in a moment here. But so far, somewhat frustrated, a little frustrated are the leaders here. So it looks like we're coming to the top. We'll end the poll here, although I know some of you are still trying to answer probably, but for the sake of time here, I'll end it. So I'm going to share the results here, and you can see most people were saying either a little frustrated, somewhat frustrated, or very frustrated. So it's good to see that nobody actually is saying they're extremely frustrated. You've got some process that works. I think it kind of speaks a bit to even what we were seeing in the results there. It's not to say that results are completely futile and every lead you're getting is a waste of time, but maybe half, maybe 2/3 are ending up being individuals that in the end weren't really worth the chase, at least at that moment, in a sense. So I'm going to take this off the screen here, but ultimately interesting to see, how everyone's responding there. One of the things that's up against us in general, not just relative to frontline fundraising, Greg, our CEO, he coins this term fundraising climate change, which really speaks to the trend that we're seeing for most organizations, of course, not all, where you're getting fewer donors, but more dollars actually. And so it's kind of a lowering of the number of donors giving to the annual fund, but your major donors, increasing their giving and stepping up and trying to find a way to actually kind of move through that change and sort of distortion in how funds are being raised. We have a tool, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call here, called Fundraising Report Card. That's a fundraising metrics and visualization tool where all you have to do is upload some anonymous data, and we're able to crunch some numbers for you. But from that, we've got some benchmarks from every organization that's ever uploaded their data. So at the top here, you'll see we're looking at stats from any donor or donation, I should say, rather, that we've analyzed that's under $100. On the bottom bar, we've got any donation we've analyzed through that tool that was over $5,000. Now, what's interesting to see is the change in retention rates. I'm not sure if you would have expected how much of a difference there is here of almost double the retention rate with supporters who make bigger gifts. And a big part of that is that, they're getting the stewardship, the actual personal engagement and such. But we're not just talking about a $5,000 gift in those instances. A lot of times we're talking about a gift of, $10, $20, $30,000 plus. And so ultimately, I'm sure it's no surprise to anybody that the lifetime value is significantly higher with these $5,000 plus donors. What I think is interesting, though, to kind of think about is if you were to almost draw a line in the middle of this screen and you were to put a percentage of your budget that goes towards the top bar versus the lower bar, what is it between staff, technology, marketing? How much of your investment is going towards that lower lifetime value? A lot of the times organizations would say that most of the investment that they make in these $5,000 plus donors is in the form of frontline fundraisers. But the truth is, much like marketing and technology supports the annual fund and other parts of your engagements today, we'll talk about today how marketing and technology can be a place to bolster your results in terms of mid-level, major, and planned gifts. Now, ultimately, some other interesting stats that come from this tool fundraising report card, again, looking at kind of this difference between $5,000 plus donors versus under $100 donors. Of any donor that we've analyzed within this tool, donors that give $5,000 plus represent only about 1%, technically less, 0.77%, let's round it up, 1% of the donors we've analyzed. So only 1% of the donors we've analyzed have made that type of gift, and yet they represent nearly 70% of the revenue that we've ever analyzed. On the other side of the coin, donors under $100 represent 76% of the donors that we've ever analyzed, and only about 6%. Now, none of this is to say, kill your annual fund, don't invest in that or something like that, but it is to shed a light on and emphasize how investing through technology, marketing, and staff in your mid-level, major, and planned giving program is not just a suggestion, it is just necessary. You are playing a game of finding needles in the haystack, one person out of 100, that can contribute, 70% of the revenue in a sense. So I think we all know these things, we experience these things, but it's quite enlightening to kind of see specific data around these outcomes. And we're seeing people in the industry kind of speak to this as well. These are some older quotes, but they still ring true. From Giving USA here, giving is increasing because of larger gifts from richer donors. Smaller and mid-level donors are slowly but surely disappearing across the board. This quote is from around the pandemic, but think about what we're dealing with grants and such now today. It just continues of nonprofit organizations in the United States are now being challenged by major political, demographic, and economic and technological factors outside of their control. And most organizations find themselves flat-footed and unable to easily adapt. So we're going to talk about today some easy solutions that you can put in place to adapt and to help you lean into these trends and find more of these needles in the haystack so that you can get them into stewardship and cultivation. So ultimately, I've been saying it already, but it's kind of a transition slide. How can you raise more mid-level, major, and planned gifts with fewer resources? You already know you can hire frontline fundraisers and you can train them to be effective at their job. Let's talk about how you can really supplement those human resources with an investment in marketing and technology to support these areas. So ultimately, where do we start? Again, I've already been kind of saying this, but we'll really dig deeper into it. Start by thinking about how do I support my frontline fundraiser, and where do frontline fundraisers tend to excel? They excel, although this might be obvious, in actually meeting with major donor prospects and building relationships and facilitating philanthropic giving. But what do they often spend most of their time on? At least when I talk to them, they're often saying, yeah, a lot of time I'm stuck in meetings. I'm asked to do more than just, work my portfolio and help with the event or help with this and that because we're understaffed. A lot of people don't even, recognize the value at times of what I'm doing. I'm sent on a lot of wild goose chases, and I spend more time than I really want to making cold calls rather than warm calls, because there isn't really a warming process at times to lead these prospects to me. And where we really need to begin, and this is sort of a something that I think is missed by a lot of vendors and a lot of consultants and a lot of the people that you'll talk to and read about with regards to automation and fundraising. And that is that before you get to automation and cultivation for that matter, we need to start with qualification. There are people who are unassigned in your database who actually shouldn't be put in automation right away. Either it could be because they don't even want to be engaged that way. They're saying they didn't opt in. More so on the positive side, maybe they're actually ready right now for a conversation about mid-level major playing gifts, but they're not being targeted because maybe they're not the top capacity score, or they're not your top, major donor, or they weren't, referred to you by another major donor. And yet if someone, if anything, just ask them if they were ready to do more, they might say, yeah, I actually am ready right away. So ultimately, what I'm going to talk about today is about putting process between identification and solicitation, giving donors who are willing and supporters who are willing the opportunity to prioritize themselves so that staff can optimize its time in the form of talking to people who are further along in the consideration process. Either they're declaring from the get-go, I'm further along and you just didn't know it till now, or they've had time to, kind of cultivate and nurture and build up to that point of inflection where they're actually ready for outreach and ready to have a conversation about doing more. At that point, we can actually assign them and the frontline fundraiser can do what they do best. So our recommended strategy, if a marketing director was to walk up to me today and say, Jeff, I'm trying to think about how to optimize our qualification cultivation process to support our frontline fundraisers, what should I do in my marketing strategy? We would say do exactly this because it's what we've found works over our 16, 17 years of business here. The first step before you get to automation is even higher level than a survey, although a survey is one of the best ways to do this, is to provide a feedback loop to these supporters who are going untapped. They're not, in someone's portfolio. They're not responding to your outreach as a frontline fundraiser. So I'll talk about other feedback loops, but far and away in terms of volume of response and just quality of response, the data you're able to gather, we found surveys are the most effective feedback loop. And I'll show you some examples in a moment of how to do that effectively. But from there, you're going to kind of end up with two buckets. You're going to end up with people who from that feedback loop said they're ready right now for outreach. Those are going to be, needles in the haystack. Maybe it's 10% or 20% of the response. And then you're going to end up with everybody else, the 80 or 90% who did lean into this feedback loop, but essentially have come out of it as being lukewarm. They're not quite ready for outreach. There's something there. You don't, want to let go of them, but you're not quite ready to allocate them. And that's really where automation, where fundraising automation can play an important role in filling a gap, nurturing and warming people who have potential but aren't quite portfolio ready. If they're portfolio ready, let's get them over to the frontline fundraisers. Let's let them build relationships with the people who are ready. But for those who need more time, let's give them that space and time, but also do it in a way that doesn't actually encumber your frontline fundraising efforts and your day-to-day efforts. You should be focused on people who are actually ready for your outreach in a sense. We also recommend, as we'll go over today, that those automated touches don't just sort of drive nowhere. They actually drive people to engage deeper with web pages that allow the supporter to self-educate about why and how to step up through mid-level major and playing gifts. When we say engage with efforts, as I'll go over, that's to say other feedback loops besides surveys to get them talking to you even more over time. And we supply a dashboard, but ultimately, even if you were to do it through your CRM, you want to have a scoring system for all of this, a way to score their survey response so that you can pick off the top opportunities that require personal engagement, a way to score if they're actually opening and clicking through on the messages and they're spending time on the pages and they're engaging with these additional efforts. It's all really to kind of say that if you provide supporters this opportunity for two-way feedback that doesn't actually involve meeting with a gift officer, you'll actually generate more meetings. It's almost kind of following that adage of ask for money and you'll get advice, ask for advice and you'll get money. This is a way to scale your ability to ask for someone's advice and their story and their opinion. So I know I'm not quite talking about automation yet, but that's because the most important actually message you could take from this is to not just jump right into automation and first uncover the supporters that are actually ready for outreach. So I'll show you a few little tips in surveying. One tip is that you need to ask about someone's story and their why. And there's many ways to do this. This is just one simple example of saying, hey, was there someone or an event, in your life that inspired you to appreciate what we do? I mean, think about how many even current major donors you don't know the answer to that question for, let alone the people who you've never even spoken to. This is tremendously valuable information, and this is where the conversation should begin. It's not about targeting them for giving. It's about, understanding, I'd love to hear more about what your grandfather did for you and the values they instilled in you. But eventually, within the surveying, so that you can find who you should talk to about those, storytelling moments, you need to ask questions that involve self-identification. You could do all of this, you could just do some of this, but we recommend things like just saying, hey, would you like to talk to us about how to make a more substantial impact? You'd be surprised how many people actually would say, yeah, I would like to talk to you. A huge opportunity to move the middle in ways that you can't screen or purchase is to ask people about their ability and interest to make non-cash gifts of assets, giving through a DAF, giving through a foundation, giving property. And so ultimately, again, you can't screen that information. You can only learn it through discovery. And a lot of charities, the only people in discovery are the people who are actually assigned to a portfolio, but you can scale those discovery efforts through feedback loops like this survey. And then finally, or I'm sorry, not finally, actually, there's one more after this. You can also do self-identification in terms of plan giving, asking people if they've already put you in their will, if they're interested right now, if they have future intent, they have no intent. The last final recommendation is to ask for demographics, because that can change the whole storyline. Maybe someone's saying no and maybe to every single one of those questions, but they're 80 to 89, they have no spouse, no children, an advanced degree, they're a board member at another charity, and they're a retired business owner. You might want to talk to them right now, even though they're saying maybe and slightly and so on and so forth. So I know that's not quite maybe the topic you came for, but it's really a kind of a caution and a recommendation to say, find the people actually who need your personal attention. Make sure they're actually not just treated like an automated, touch, and really get that personal engagement. And in that regard, don't use automation to replace a fundraiser doing what they do best and building relationships with people who are ready for outreach. Use automation to fill a gap that kind of otherwise gets untouched, talking to the people who you don't immediately place in portfolio out of these, feedback loops. I won't have time today to show you all of these other feedback loops really at all, but I did want to at least flash this image on your screen. You may already be doing some of these things, but there are many other, feedback loops you can offer to your supporters to get them to essentially both tell their story and self-identify where they are in the consideration process, whether you're asking them to tell your life story, you're engaging with a newsletter, or you have gift-specific offers like a DAF effort or an IRA effort, so on and so forth. So again, we won't have time at all actually to review any of these particular feedback loops, but I did want to give you a sense of what else exists out there. And there's plenty of other things you could do in addition to all of this. Say, as a higher ed, you could offer a feedback loop where you invite people to tell their story and download their yearbook, for instance, just as an example. But all in all, step one before automation is provide a feedback loop, give supporters the chance to actually self-identify that they're ready for outreach in some way. And I've already mentioned this, but just to highlight it further, the top prospects deserve personal outreach. Who are the top prospects? Again, you can create a scoring system for this, but things that you should pay attention to are the things we just mentioned. Are they, saying they're likely to talk to someone or give in certain, non-cash gift of asset ways? Do they have demographics that would, show that they are a great candidate for a bigger gift, like having no kids? Again, this is just more of them showing interest in different giving opportunities. Have they ordered brochures? They rank you as, their top, charity. So it's all in all trying to take, you've got a wealth score, right? Or a capacity screening, or maybe you've done one in the past. That is quantitative data. This is qualitative data. What are they saying? And eventually we'll get around to talking about what are they doing that would indicate that they're ready for outreach. Whether that confirms the capacity score, they were our top capacity score and they're our top, qualitative score, or it could debunk it. They were our lowest capacity score, but at the end of the day, we asked them and they're ready and they're able. But either way, you need both of these sort of bells to ring to find your top prospects. So let's really get into automation. I'm just checking my clock here. First off, we'll start out at a basic level, and then I'll get back into where I was of how to use automation with regards to frontline fundraising. But there's kind of levels to this thing. There's basic, mid-level, high level. The basic, we're all familiar with. I mean, these are kind of set and forget it. It's not too complicated. Maybe it's, an automatic thank you after someone, makes an online donation. That is automation, even at a very basic form. There's, you could say mid-level, which is going a little further, like say setting up a triggered sort of drip series of automated emails. Maybe it's a full, actually not just thank you email, but true thank you series where this, that, and the other, goes out to them after the donation. The highest level, these automations, basic and mid-level, you probably already use them in your sort of annual fund, your low dollar fundraising efforts. That's where they're best used, just to create more efficiency and get more people to come back, through a feedback loop of sorts. But in terms of mid-level, major, and plan gifts and gifts of assets, automation really is done in a different way when best done. It's not just about an automated touch like the basic or even a stream of touches like the mid-level. It's about really creating a whole ecosystem for supporters to kind of self-educate. So that involves not just the automation, but pairing it with landing pages and microsites, having segmentation within the automation, having personalization with the automation, potentially kind of dynamic or variable content based on what you're learning, say from a survey, and plugging it in to your automation. It also involves, potentially more complex workflows, tracking and scoring online engagement, and really prioritizing the data that you're receiving, not just sort of setting stuff out, but using it as a means to figure out who's the top prospect in a sense. So you may already do this in some capacity, but I'll show you how we recommend you do this. But the key here is that we're using automation, one, like I've been mentioning, to fill the gap of nurturing supporters that have potential but are going untouched, but also importantly for the purpose of raising assets, not cash. You already have often a process for cash, and the wealthiest supporters are going to keep their wealth primarily in the form of assets, many of which, although the wealth screen companies might not tell you, you can't screen for. You actually just need to uncover through discovery. So use automation. Our recommendation is to really engage major donor prospects and prioritize caseloads. By doing so, you can remove kind of the more mundane tasks from your major gift officer, your frontline fundraisers' duties in a sense. Now, although workflows and different things can play into this higher level of automation, one thing that we've learned at MarketSmart is that it doesn't have to be tremendously elaborate or all these branching sort of different lanes that come off of it. One way to think of this is, for instance, when we were looking at surveys there, we're asking, what do you give through a DAF? What do you give through a foundation? What do you give through an IRA? One person's mind might say, okay, depending on what they say there, I'm going to have the IRA track and the DAF track and this track. You actually don't need to do that. And the reason is this: if they are actually ready for outreach, you shouldn't even be engaging them with automation anyways. They should be in a portfolio and they should be getting personal outreach where, yes, the frontline fundraiser should take into account these specific interests and prescribe, an outreach of some sort, whether personal or email or et cetera, that, adheres to those, what you've learned from the supporter. But if they've gone through that process, shown some interest here and there, but by your, sort of qualification, they're not really ready for outreach. And that's often because either they're saying they're not ready, or you don't know really yet that what they're interested in, whether it's a specific project or a particular giving opportunity. And so what's best is to actually give them sort of the full menu, let them taste the full menu, create an automated strategy that although they may have shown interest in DAFs and not in planned giving, still, you might still both highlight within that automation a story of someone who gave through DAF alongside in a different email, someone who gave through their will in a sense. You just never know. People can be coy on their survey at first. Their life can also just change. I'm sure you all see it on a day-to-day basis where someone who seemingly didn't look like a prospect at all becomes one. Maybe it's because of an inheritance or death or business sold or retirement or graduation. There's things that occur that completely change the course of these supporters' decision-making process. And so all in all, it's best if you're going to be putting them in automation to kind of leave them to simmer and warm until they're ready for outreach. It's best to show them the full menu and not get too elaborate in terms of all these branching different sort of streams you could do based on what they said. Now, here's a really important one that gets missed all the time is that just because someone is opted into your general marketing does not mean that they are actually opted into hearing directly from you as a frontline fundraiser, whether that's personal outreach or automated outreach. And so there's a lot of vendors and different sort of consultants out there that might say, yeah, just create, this automated stream, pick out your targets and start sending them stuff. We're here at Market Smart to say, number one, stop. First, you need a feedback loop to understand if they actually need personal engagement. But then we're even going to say furthermore, you need kind of like a double opt-in. Yes, they're opt into your general marketing. That's what allows you to survey them or engage them in different ways. But you're trying to really build a community, almost like you're trying to build a portfolio. It's just this one's automated of people who genuinely want to hear from you. They actually are looking for more engagement. They're actually yearning to learn about how and why to step up. Again, they're not quite ready for outreach from you, but they want to learn more. And this question can be blanketed in any form of marketing. You could ask this if you're doing a survey. You could ask this if you're sending a newsletter. You could ask this just as a plain question on your main website. But invite your supporters to opt into even more engagement and this sort of insider community. You could make it more generic if you don't want to kind of call it this insider community. But it's really important that you don't just sort of spray and pray. You actually invite supporters to lean in and they opt into wanting further communication. What that allows you to do is say a year after you've started this process, you can go to your board, you can go to your leadership and say, it's not just that we're sending people stuff. We've actually got this tribe of 500 people or 1,000 people, whatever it is, who told us they want to hear more about these opportunities. And we've been getting X and Y, open rates and click rates, and we can see they're leaning in. Imagine if we even just had one more frontline fundraiser to work this portfolio that we've been warming. So it's really important that you ask them to opt in. Now, to kind of get to the real, meat and potatoes, you came here for fundraising automation. I haven't actually shown you an example of fundraising automation. I've kind of, dressed up the context and such and the steps before, but it's actually not that complicated. Ultimately, there's some simple things you can do that go a long way. And I'm sure you actually do these things for the people that you're directly communicating with in your portfolio. But automation is a means, again, to scale this to folks who aren't in your portfolio and therefore tend to go untouched in these ways. They're getting the general marketing, the solicitations, the newsletter, but this is more about automating a personal touch from you. It looks like it was written by you. It's kind of bare bones, like it was written right out of Outlook or Gmail. And one simple thing is just to say thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for leaning in. Thank you for everything you're doing to support us. And as simple of a message as that is, you might have someone of extreme wealth, write you back in this way saying, I've been supporting a whole bunch of groups for a long time. This is actually the most gracious acknowledgement I've ever received. Tell your supervisor to keep you on staff. Your mother brought you up right. Hope your new year's off to a great start. Are you going to be in better standing when you call this person, a month or 2 or 3 months from now because they've been engaging? Of course you will. And especially when compared to if you don't do any of this. But it's about automating the frontline fundraisers touches to warm supporters who have potential. Another important thing is that you can use the information that you're gathering from surveys and feedback loops to personalize the messages in an automated way. So in this automation one, as I mentioned, it's going to come right from a gift officer, but you could even program it to come from different individuals based on the geographic region or the unit or however you break up your supporters. You could take information that you're learning from them on the survey when you're asking them about their story and their values, or you're asking them, in this case, about plan giving. You're considering a legacy gift, you know, and furthermore, drive them to engage further, to self-educate further. Make sure the replies go right into an actual human being's inbox so that if, you know, John here replies, someone's there to actually reach right back out. But in the meantime, you know that a personal touch from you that's truly personalized based on what they told you is going out and providing kind of that next step in that nurturing. A tremendously powerful thing to do is just to simply share stories of other supporters and why they gave, just to inspire people to kind of see themselves through that story. So you could read through this entire example, but all in all, it's just highlighting someone who gave and why they gave and encouraging the supporter to lean in. And it's important to notice here in all these examples that there's no solicitation. There's no ask to sort of take some next step, take a meeting with me, you know, do this, do that. It's just simply about non-solicitously providing value and building trust, but therein is more qualitative data that we can track and score. Is Marie, who answered the survey, 12 months ago, is she still opening them? Is she clicking through on the messages? Is she spending time actually watching the video about the supporter? Clearly, this is something she's interested in. We should call her now, even though we didn't call her 12 months ago. This one's a little bit blurry, but a little different topic of mission impact. This one's saying, hey, this is from me, the gift officer, but our CEO and president had this video from the field. I thought you'd want to see that, our CEO is not just stuck in the boardroom, far from it. He's, down in the grass, working with everybody else. P.S. I'll be reaching out to you occasionally with more stories like this. So I hope you don't mind. Feel free to give me feedback. Simple touch, got a 41% open rate and a 20% click rate. So between saying thank you, using information you learned to customize your emails, sharing supporter stories, and sharing mission impact, you can cover a lot of ground. I'd say if you wanted to do anything even in addition to that, just simple things like a tax tip or offering a giving brochure, but it's got to be non-solicitous, it's got to be non-threatening, and it's got to be really about, more than anything, providing value to the recipient. So what are the benefits of all of this? I think you kind of are already seeing it through the presentation, but if you were using marketing to qualify in these feedback loops, and you're using automation to multiply your frontline fundraiser, and you're tracking and scoring who's leaning in, it really allows one gift officer to perform like many, as though they've got this sort of discovery officer paired with them that's doing the qualification, doing the nurturing of supporters that don't immediately end up in your portfolio. You can generate hot opportunities from self-identification, and you can, in a way that doesn't actually take up the time of the frontline fundraiser, move people through a process where they kind of warm themselves to a point of readiness for outreach. And sometimes we'll even set their own appointment right on your calendar. We like to refer to what you're kind of seeing here today as actionable intelligence. I was referring to it as kind of the qualitative data versus the quantitative data. We have different jargon here, but we refer to responses to surveys and feedback loops as verbatims, self-reported donor data. We're not predicting it. We're not sourcing it. We're just getting it right from their mouth, how they feel and what their story is. And the other piece of data that we track and encourage you to track is digital body language. What are they doing when they're on their own time that would show that they're actually considering these gifts? Are they clicking through on the messages about mid-level, major, and plan giving? Are they spending time on the pages related to those topics as well? This will lead to better prospect qualification, both in terms of giving you even more data for those that you already felt were your top prospects, but also, like I was mentioning before, helping people who are on the bottom of your list rise up because they're showing qualitative sort of data points that would indicate that they're really one of your top prospects, even though it may not look like it based on the quantitative data, such as their giving history, event participation, and capacity score. So ultimately, what would you track on a website for digital body language? It can range. I've been mentioning some of these things, but It could be that whether they're driven there through automation or not, they're reading supporter stories. They're looking at kind of the how-to information on ways to give and, looking at sample bequest language or looking at how to transfer, appreciate assets. Or maybe they're looking at, your donor benefits and your giving societies, or they're playing with different things in your toolkit. Maybe you have a giving calculator. Maybe you have our DAF widget, which is kind of what's shown in the upper right hand here. But every one of these things is a sign that they're thinking about it. They're thinking, why and how potentially should I step up through mid-level, major, and planned giving? And the beauty is there's kind of truth serum in all of this. It's not you forcing their hand. It's not you trying to sort of pull one on them, invite them to an event that's about A, but you're really just going to ask them for money. This is just their own decision. They're truly just on their own time navigating the decision. And so it's important that you monitor, track, and score how people are engaging with your content related to mid-level, major, and planned giving, and that it plays into a score that you can actually quantify and prioritize. So this is how it could look, where you're looking at a donor and you can see, okay, we sent them this automated touch, a smart way to maximize impact. They opened that. It may not have been from them actually clicking through on that message, but at some point in June, they came through over to one of our pages and they were looking at videos of the impact of, mid-level, major, and planned gifts. So they might have received one score for their initial survey response data, such as this demographic information, but they get a bump in their score because they came in, they visited the website and spent some time there. So there's many ways you could configure this, but it's all in all just to say our recommendation is don't just drive people to stuff through automation and think, all right, I did my job. You actually need to track and score and prioritize and figure out who's actually bubbling to the top, because they're showing you they're ready, and it's just a matter of then reaching out and building a relationship. So we're at the 45-minute mark. We worked our way through kind of the first three things here of why to consider fundraising automation, our recommendations on how to do it, and a few examples from the field as you saw there. So with the last 15 minutes or so here, I'm going to give a quick preview of just what we do here at MarketSmart. If you're all good, you got what you needed for today, that's totally fine. I would still ask that you fill out our survey to help us improve and give us feedback. You can do that by scanning this QR code or by just when you exit, it'll pop up for you. So last three items here, I promise I won't belabor this too much of what we do here at MarketSmart, but you're kind of already heard it in the way of this presentation. But we provide turnkey, done for you fundraising automation, essentially warming unassigned supporters up for outreach, helping you fill your portfolios with prospects that are self-identifying readiness. And ultimately, the system I told you to build is exactly what we do. It's just we handle all the heavy lifting for you. But ultimately, our focus is on two outcomes. Every day, every month, every year, we're working for our customers to help them find people who are ready for outreach right now, get those allocated to portfolios, but then build out a process with which automation is a component to warm and nurture supporters in an effortless way for the frontline fundraisers until they're ready for outreach. And the exact strategy that I recommend you do, and it's not just to be salesy or something like that. Truly, if you were to do it yourself, I'd tell you to do it. But we put in place this exact strategy. We build out surveys. We build out automation to multiply your frontline fundraising team. We build out and help you track and score engagement with web pages related to mid-level, major, and planned gifts. We incorporate other feedback loops and efforts, and we have a whole dashboard and scoring system for prioritizing how prospects move through that entire process so that you can focus on just doing the meetings with the people who bubble up, and we'll handle everything else for you, from the copy to the design to the strategy, etc. If you're interested, feel free to just go to our website and hit that schedule a demo button, and we can just give you a free preview and see if there's a good fit. We don't bite; it won't be too overly salesy. Another thing we can do before or after that is we provide a free analysis to anybody that's interested. That QR code will take you to our opportunity analysis page there. But ultimately, we provide a free analysis that uses anonymous data and allows us to really look into your file and understand, first off, just some of your historical giving trends, but furthermore, really zero in on an audience of supporters that we believe are prime for this type of outreach and help you project response rates, ROI, etc. So these are just some screenshots from that type of engagement. But ultimately, it's all really just to say, one, if you're interested, click that schedule a demo button or reach out to us directly. And then two, along the way, we could do this type of analysis for free and using anonymous data to help you really envision, is the juice worth the squeeze? You know, do you really have enough sort of list and opportunity to make something like this worthwhile in terms of at least working with Market Smart on it? I think the tactics explained today, regardless, are worth exploring at the very least in-house. Even if you just from today say, I'm going to make a SurveyMonkey survey, or I'm going to build out a stream of automation in my CRM that supports my frontline fundraiser. I'm going to build in even just one little part of my website where I'm going to start tracking and scoring if people engage with it. So we've arrived to kind of the final part here of just Q&A here, and I see some different questions flowing in. You know, Trisha, if you want, feel free to queue up a few of those questions here. I'm just looking through the chat here at first. Thank you, Dennis. You mentioned just a good presentation and said you know, enjoys what our company puts out there. Looks like Bill here had asked, this was about a half hour ago, so Bill, I don't even know if he's still here, but he said, isn't there a risk of turning off potential donors that have already engaged with an organization in a light way with this survey? You know, ultimately, one is you're going to pick the list for who receives the survey. So if you ultimately feel like you know someone so well, and or they've told you just not to engage them this way, then don't engage them this way. You could still do something like reaching out to them personally and saying, hey, Joe, it's not that I don't know you, I know you, but I thought maybe, you don't have to, but I thought maybe you'd like to take part in this survey. Everybody else is receiving it. It's not that we don't know you, but we wanted to give you a chance to, you know, tell us your story and anything else you'd like to fill in. And think about, for even some of your top major donors or board members, how few of them you've actually asked any of these questions to. Would you give through a DAF? Have you put us in your will? You know, and so ultimately there is gain to be had, but I think your caution is realistic, Bill, that you kind of need to make sure you don't go to those individuals. But for the most part, outside of that sort of top key audience that you can clearly indicate to yourself are, you know, close contacts, there are always the potential for any survey for someone to kind of use it as an outlet to kind of be disgruntled. But truly, it's not just to sort of pump up what we recommend. We don't tend to see a lot of upset donors because we ask them about their story and their why and their readiness to give and engage in different ways. In fact, more than anything, the donors and supporters kind of respond saying, you guys never do this. It's interesting. I'm excited that someone's actually asking me these questions. Especially imagine someone who's never gotten a call from a frontline fundraiser, or they've never been in a portfolio or anything like that. We had an anonymous attendee say, it sounds all really good, but is this feasible for small charities that are already stretched thin in terms of resources and have no manpower to track so many elements? I think there's a reality to that. You know, you may not take everything that we said here today, but even if you were just to take components, I think you will find that it will bring you value and will help you scale. I mentioned, you know, even as simple as, say, whether it's a print survey that you write out on, you know, Microsoft Word, or an online survey you build in SurveyMonkey, and even if you only have 500 emails, you know, still reaching out to those folks and saying, hey, we want to take the time to learn your story and give you a chance to tell us more. Or maybe you don't do the survey, but rather you just build out some automation to nurture for the next 6 months, you know, or the next 12 months, people who aren't in your portfolio, but you think they're prospects, that you think they could rise up. And so you build out some supporter stories. So yeah, you got to play with, you know, the actual human resources you have. And that may mean you can't do everything, but I hope that there's at least one thing from today that you feel like you could use to optimize your process. So I'm going to hit answered live on those two. Someone asked, will we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, you will. And we'll also send out a recording. Someone asked here, how does your company collaborate with third-party website hosts? How do we integrate the data with your company? That's something we could go into more depth on if you want to schedule time with us. But the short answer is essentially, at least the way MarketSmart works, we end up creating for the website a subdomain of your website. So we're not actually building a separate web space. We're building within your web space and tracking engagement. And then the dashboard that we have created can integrate with any CRM. We can get the data that we're collecting into any field you'd like in your CRM. So we're compatible in those ways. Let's see here. I'm going to check the actual chat tool. Let's see. So Corinne asked, is MarketSmart service, are MarketSmart services limited to the US only? So it's kind of a mixed bag of an answer. The marketing services that I've described today of surveying, automation, website development, tracking, those are limited to it's more so engaging US-based prospects, which ultimately ends up meaning for a lot of organizations US-based organizations. But yes, those marketing services are, at least for today, limited to US-based supporters to engage them. However, the mixed bag answer is that the other tools I've described today at different times, Fundraise report card, the DAF widget, those are not exclusive to the US. Those can be used internationally in a sense. And that may change over time, but that's at least our status today, Corinne, for your question there. Yeah, no problem, Corinne. Let's see. We still got a little bit more time here. I'm going to see if there are other questions that pop in here. But if not, I'll save you guys a little bit of time in your day. But yeah, a lot of the webinars I go to, they end up running over. So I'll give this as a good mark that we've got a little extra time. But it looks like, I'll wait a sec, but it looks like everybody's got their questions answered. Feel free though to use that Q&A or the chat tool I've got pulled up here on my end in case anything comes in. Looks like George raised his hand here. I'm not sure, George, if like in the beginning there, if you're going to be able to talk or not. I really don't know. If you're not, feel free to just type in your question there. Yeah, I don't know if I'm able to do that. It looks like actually George left here, but Henry just popped in a question. Thanks, Henry. Is there a size requirement for organizations to engage with MarketSmart? It's a case by case thing. There's the trends, and then there's at times exceptions, to the trends. Not always, but a lot of the time the greatest sort of barometer for it making sense to work with MarketSmart, but this is directly correlated to your size, but it's a little different answer, is really the size of your list. I'd say most organizations that partner with MarketSmart have a list of at least 10,000 supporters that they would engage with this process. That doesn't have to mean that they're all donors, but there tends to be at least 10,000 people to engage. I still think everything described here today is worthwhile to employ regardless of your list size in-house, but to legitimize, the expense of working with MarketSmart. Often you need a list of 10,000 plus to create the results and the ROI that would, make sense for that type of investment. The exceptions to that rule are when you have a tremendously passionate list. An example of this would be, for instance, we have quite a few private higher education institutions that partner with us that either don't have 10,000 names to engage or close to that mark, but they get tremendous, response rates and engagement from that list. And so ultimately, it's almost like they're able to produce the response of a list that's bigger than them in another circumstance. So all in all, that's the greatest barometer. There are other, sort of correlating data points to list size that correlate to your revenue size and your fundraising expense size. But I'd say that's really the most important part. Another way to sum up a lot of my words there in shorter is to say the best candidates for Market Smart, they have too big of a list for them to engage personally, and they have a desire and a need to scale discovery and cultivation to that entire list. So they know they want to get out to them, but they just don't have the personnel to do it. If you only have, say, 1,000 people on your list, that may be actually, although a lot of people to engage, still small enough that you could, personally engage them all, or you could have an event and get, half of them to come, or things like that. So that's really the biggest sort of, I don't know, fulcrum in it all. Someone asked if we're able to share our prices. That's something that is sort of custom built for our customers. So if you are interested, that'd be something we'd have to discuss from, just first doing at least an initial discovery call to understand what you're looking to accomplish. So I'm going to leave that sort of a little bit blurred lines there, but encourage you, if you're interested, to reach out to us and we can help you think through that. Let's see here. Still got 1 or 2 more minutes. It looks like a handful of you are still here. So I appreciate everybody's time and attention here, and happy to continue to answer questions here as they flow in. But let's see here. Nothing coming in just yet. Well, I think with that, we are going to we're going to call it a webinar here. I hope each and every one of you got at least one kind of good tip you can go home with here, if not many. And definitely feel free to continue to reach out and engage with us, whether that be because you want to learn more about what we do and investing in it, or if you just want to engage with our thought leadership, the blogs, the webinars, the reports, etc. Whatever whatever we can do to support you, we're happy to do so. Well, thank you everybody for your time. I hope everybody has a good rest of your day. And yeah, I'll sign off with that.